Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is part 2. If you would have watched Friday's video, I will link it above here for you to watch. But I realized when I was editing that video that I kind of went through all of my past and the main reason why I feel like I have a food addiction. However, I didn't really say how it affects me and the struggles that, you know, has brought me to where I am today, and my weight gain, weight loss, yo-yo dieting that I've had for the last, 25 years, right? So I want to go over that in this video. If you do want to see kind of, what I explained, be sure to watch my previous video that I posted on Friday, and it'll kind of bring you up to speed. But I had mentioned a lot of things in that video about my childhood, and I wanted to go over some of those things on how it has affected me in my adult life with my food addiction. So with being allergic to literally everything, every single thing, including, red meat, potatoes, vegetables, fish, nuts, things that I'm even still allergic to this day. And I was severely allergic to it. Like, this is anaphylactic, hospitalized. Even to this day, I have to have 2 EpiPens on me at all times because we do live a half an hour away from the city. So if I do have a reaction, I need to do an EpiPen immediately, and then I need to do another one about 15-20 minutes later, which puts us halfway to town, and then obviously then I would be at the hospital. And let me tell you, me and Zoe, because Zoe has the exact same thing as me, not as severe, because I've mentioned there's a lot of medications that have definitely helped now in the 2000s. Like, she was born in 2002. There's tons of medication that is so helpful and that has helped her so that she didn't go through with what I did. She was hospitalized quite a bit, but not as many times as myself, or as long of a duration as I was when I was a child. But she also has to have an EpiPen because our allergies are so severe, life-threatening. And I wasn't able to eat anything as a child. Like I mentioned in my previous video, I ate chicken and rice, and that was the kind of elimination diet that they would put on you back in that day. I'm pretty sure it probably has changed since then. And I was very limited to what I could have, right? When you think about a lot of the things that you buy in a grocery store and even Whole Foods, they like the packaged things contain so many ingredients, as you know. They're processed. However, when you're allergic to, wheat, eggs, and all of these things, that pretty much any sort of packaged processed food contains either one of those or something. An egg white or an egg yolk or some sort of coloring. I was allergic to dyes. Like, red dye was really, really bad and would flare up my eczema. Like, so many things, that I was literally allergic to everything, and I don't mean that by an exaggeration. And I don't look for sympathy. Like I've said in my last video, that doesn't define me, even though that was my childhood. But I am my own person. There's much more to me than being the sick child. And, that doesn't define me. But I just want to let you know how severe it was and the reasonings, how it became my food addiction. So when I left home, I had mentioned in that video that I was cured. I was cured at age 17, and that's when I graduated high school. I stayed home for a year and I worked, and my mom and dad, graciously enough, they paid for 2 years of education for me and my siblings. And because that was the one thing that nobody could ever take away from you. They would always say that, and I've done the same with my girls. Marriages fail, cars crash, all of these things, that you could buy for your children when they graduate and leave home are just materialistic things, but your education you will always have. So that is the one thing that my parents did. And I went away to college. I went to Medicine Hat when I was 18 years old. And once again, everything was at my fingertips. Like, I was shocked to know that there was fast food places that were open 24 hours a day. Like, coming from a small town, that was amazing for me. Like, I was like, wow, this is so amazing. 7-Eleven, Slurpees, all of these things, like literally down the street from me. And you know, being subjected to such a limiting diet and, you know, a restricted diet and eliminating a lot of foods out of my life for years, all of my childhood. I'm talking 16 years. This isn't, you know, like a 6-month thing to take out, you know, dairy or whatever. That was another huge thing for me, was dairy. But this was my life. This was my childhood, that I had to eliminate so many foods. And that is part, you know, it's a small part of my food addiction. Like I said, there are other factors that have happened in my life. I've experienced everything there is to experience for a woman, and you know, I'm not going to go into that here on YouTube, but there definitely is other factors that contribute to my food addiction and why I turn to food for comfort. But as far as turning to food as, oh my gosh, I can actually eat this. Wow, I can actually have, I'm not saying that it was good for me, but I'm saying, like, I could have red candies, which are my favorite now in my adult life. The red jubes, the red hard candies, all of those things that I could not have because it would be so severe that I would end up in the hospital for months, if not a year. And I'm not kidding. And so when I was able to have those things with only mild reactions, you know, I would still get flare-ups, you know, and my asthma, you know, it wasn't completely healed, but I would consider myself healed because of how severe it was to how mild it was when I was 18. I could eat the processed foods without, you know, dying and being hospitalized. I could eat the fast food, which I never got to have because, heaven forbid, I eat anything that my mom didn't make me at home. I couldn't do it. It was too risky. It was way too much of a risk. And I understood that, you know, growing up. It was way too much of a risk when I had sleepovers at friends. Like, I brought my own food. I couldn't risk what they made and what ingredients could be in it. You know, and I never had, as far as like, you know, going to the ice cream shop, you know, when you were young, right when you were 10 years old, and going to the candy shop and your mom and dad would give you a couple dollars to go and get yourself some candy. I never had that. So when I was 18, when I left home, I really indulged in those things because I had healed from how severe my childhood allergies were. And, you know, it kind of, like, if you go back on my videos and what I've been talking about with keto, and I did keto for weight loss, I did not do it for medical reasons, but I do talk about how restricting it is, and to take out a food group, and how it really did things to me mentally and physically. That is 100% true. And the reason why I say that, I put 2 and 2 together. Like I said, therapy has done absolute wonders for me and my relationship to food. And I encourage you, if you're in the same boat, to do the same, because man, oh man, I'm telling you, it has done so, going keto has been, I'm embarrassed to say this because this is what my channel and how I started it, but it has been the worst way of eating that I could have ever done for me, for myself, for my mental health, because of the situation of my scenario and my past growing up, when that was my life and I hated it. If you can only imagine how many nights I would cry to my mom and say, like, why can't I do this? Why can't I eat the ice cream? Why, you know, are all the other kids enjoying, you know, lunch day at school or pizza day at school? Like, why can't I do that? Why can't I be part of it? And it was a life or death situation. And now with keto, you know, it brought me back to that. You know, it took me a long time. I did keto for 3 years. It worked. I lost weight. However, in the long run, I think always in the back of my head, subconsciously, it was restricting, and it was taking me back to those feelings and, you know, the unhappiness that I felt in my childhood by taking away foods taking away food groups, and all of these things. And you know, when I started introducing carbs back in, and I was going through stress, and there were so many factors that went through weight gain, but I'm learning a lot. And you know, when I first came to Medicine Hat, that's when I started my yo-yo dieting. You know, I gained weight the first year I was away from home. I'm sure everybody does, you know, the college 10 pounds or the college 20, you know, and I did the same way, but it was a roller coaster ever since then, ever since I left home. It's so hard to explain. It's so hard to explain exactly what I'm thinking, because it was the restriction that made me binge. And then when I binged and gained weight, I went back to the restriction. And it was just a cycle. It was just a constant cycle, hence the yo-yo dieting of losing weight and gaining weight. And subconsciously, it had to do with, you know, 16 years of being so restrictive and being so careful on what I was eating, as I wasn't allowed to eat those things because I would end up in the hospital. And I made up for that. I was really, really small as a child. I was very, very tiny. I was underweight probably up until I was like 14. I was underweight. I was always the smallest one in my class, just like Zoe. Like Zoe is exactly the same as me, you know. And I was always the smallest, and I was always so frail and, you know, so sick. And it's so funny, like I was reading the comments on my video from Friday, and there was a lady there that said her son went through the same thing, and, you know, was so small and looked like he was malnourished. I was that kid. And then I made up for it. You know, I made up for it in my adult years, and, you know, being like an average size for me was always like a size 12. That was pretty much like my average. Like if I got to size 16 and, you know, 18, well, then I was like, oh, I need to lose weight. And then I would lose weight. I would get to like that size 10, 12, and it would just be a constant cycle, like I just mentioned. But it's a lot of learning, and it's a lot of digging, because like I said in Friday's video, I had the best childhood ever. I really, really do. I think of those memories even to this day, on, you know, things we did. We did a lot of traveling. We went to the Black Hills, you know, in North Dakota every single summer, and we visited all throughout the states. My dad was huge into driving, into traveling and vacationing and all of those things. We had functions at our house. You know, my dad, like I said, was an alcoholic, so there was always people over at our house. He had a full bar down in our basement where we always had company. You know, he was a huge Elvis fan, so we had Elvis nights, you know, every year, and people would come over. There was always people over at our house, and it was just the greatest childhood, seriously, hands down. So you don't think about that and what happened to you as a child, because I had the best childhood. I didn't have anything physical. Like my mom or dad never spanked us. You know, they never were angry. They never grounded us. Like they used the gentle parenting like I do with my girls. I've never spanked or anything with my girls. And there was nothing traumatic that happened to me as a child other than being sick. But to me, that was the norm. Like that was just my life. You know, I don't think of it as being traumatic because it happened for 16 years of my life, you know? And I really had to dig a little bit deeper to figure that out and say, look, like your childhood was drastically different than anybody's, you know, but to me it was just normal because my siblings were so much older in age. They were all gone from the house. You know, my sister, who is the closest sibling to me, is 8 years older than me. And then my oldest sibling is, you know, 14, 15 years older than me. They were all out of the house by the time, you know, I was 10 years old, right? And so I felt like an only child. So to me, it was like, I don't know what a normal childhood is supposed to be because I felt like an only child. And, you know, this was my life. This was normal to me, other than, you know, other kids getting ice cream and getting treats and pizza and all that stuff. But when you're living in that for 16 years and that's your life, you don't really think of it as being any different or traumatic, right? And I had to really think about it. I had to really think about it and put in the work to say, look, this is why you have an unhealthy relationship with food, because you overindulged once you left home. And, you know, it wasn't life-threatening to eat out anymore. It wasn't life-threatening to have ice cream anymore. And when you're subjected to not having anything for 16 years, I feel like just, it's kind of normal to like overindulge in it. But that's just me. You know what I mean? Food is something that we need to eat. So like when I couldn't have it for 16 years and all of a sudden I could, I was like, give me the fast food, give me the ice cream, it's so good. And I never have had it for 16 years, right? And, you know, that was really a light bulb moment for me. It really was, because it really made me think of how my childhood was so different than others and how it was so restricted. And, you know, it just did so much on my mental health, especially like when I left home. And like I said, I was free to do whatever I wanted and to eat kind of whatever I wanted. I still had severe allergies, and I still do to this day, that are anaphylactic. But, you know, for the most part, I can have dairy without, you know, a severe reaction. I can eat chocolate. I can eat all of these things that I can have now without having a severe reaction. So I just wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit more, onto why my childhood has affected my adult life so much and my eating habits. Because when I said, when I was editing that video, I was like, okay, you talk about your childhood, but you never really went into how it affected you in your adult life. And that's exactly how it affected me. I overindulged. I was able to eat all the things, so I did eat all the things. And dieting, you know, the keto diet specifically, that's what it did to me. You know, after a while, it was so restricting, and it was like, in the back of my mind, I was like, this is like so restricting. Like I can't do this, and I don't want to do this, because I lived such a restricting life on food in the past, and I just want to really fix that, and I want to be able to have a balanced diet. You know, you got to think about yourselves. Like I always say to people, you know, if you were allergic, severely allergic to food, let's say dairy, and you ended up in the hospital, and it was that severe, and it would, you know, cause breathing problems and everything like that, would you eat dairy? Probably your answer is going to be no. However, if you have a sensitivity to dairy, and maybe you have a little bloating, or, you know, makes you just a little bit uncomfortable after you have ice cream, would you stop eating that for the rest of your life? Like the answer is probably no, because, you know, you're not going to have ice cream every day, but you're still not going to stop eating it because it makes you a little bit uncomfortable for the next couple hours. Now, obviously there's lactose intolerant people. You're probably not going to have ice cream unless you take, I think there's a pill that you can take if you're lactose intolerant before you eat any dairy. But I'm just using that as an example. I wanted to be a little bit thorough in this follow-up video and let you know, like I said, the discovery that I've had and why, you know, the way that I was eating in my childhood has affected me now in the present. So make sure you go and watch Friday's video. It definitely explains a lot. And, you know, these videos do go hand in hand. And so make sure you check up on that video, and it'll kind of bring you up to par after this video as well too. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all of your kind comments. I appreciate them all, and we will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.